Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk ETC. I have with me a special guest, one of the core ETCDEV developers, Isaac. He will be explaining, describing, elaborating on ETCDEV past, present, and future. So welcome, Isaac, to the show. First time.
Hi, Christian. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So do you go by Isaac, or is there another alias that you prefer, or is there a last name you want to give out, or what? How do you want people to?
I guess my enemies call me Isaac, but the name my friends use for me, I don't think would be polite to repeat.
All right. So just Isaac, the ETCDEV developer. All right. So great. So thanks again for coming on the show. And why don't we start by, why don't you let us, the audience, learn a little bit about you. So why don't you tell us about your background, maybe your education, jobs you've had, and how you stumbled upon the blockchain sector and then ETCDEV.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I sure don't want to make this a resume, but sort of my background, I was born and raised in Montana. And wound up going to a liberal arts college, which I really enjoyed. Was able to sort of chase down a lot of interests, and do a lot of exploring. And since then, I've had all kinds of jobs. I've been a painter, a bartender, teacher. Driver, bicycle messenger, all kinds of professional pooper. Gets people going. So I'm very
so that's interesting. So if some people are just like from the get-go, they're always nerds. Yeah. So you're kind of more balanced and you creative, perhaps, I would guess, and the fact that you've done all those different jobs, you probably bring a fresh perspective and a wider perspective to the work that you do, I'm guessing.
Well, I appreciate your optimism in me, but I would hesitate to say wider or more creative.
Okay.
Than anyone necessarily. I think, it's definitely true. I haven't been coding since I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And I'm definitely not ashamed to say I'm still definitely a relative. I consider myself a rookie.
Okay.
But I do. I really like it. I really enjoy code, and it's something that's come natural to me.
And how did you, after having all those different jobs, being like a painter and the other jobs that you said, a teacher, how did you, or when did you discover that programming was something that A, you had a talent for, and B, something that you wanted to do?
I just sat down one day and started playing around.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish there was a more interesting story. But,
what languages did you learn? What was your first ones?
I think many people started off with HTML. I thought started with a focus on web development, and I really enjoyed that too, because there's a lot of elements of design that are involved with that, and so being able to see shapes come alive and then become active and
visual creation.
Become stories. I really enjoyed that. But now to me, far more interesting is sort of the nitty-gritty code. I prefer.
And what languages do you
code? Pure logic.
What languages do you program in beyond HTML?
Right now, my main language is Go.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Golang. Yeah.
Okay. And so you start playing around with programming, and then so you could have done, your basic web development. You could have had jobs in that, but how did you get into I mean, that's pretty hardcore to go from HTML to
Mm-hmm.
blockchains and then
Yeah.
ETCDEV. So you gotta tell us how you gotta bridge that gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's even though it sounds like I've had a lot of jobs,
uh-huh.
I'm not particularly ever inclined to be employed.
Okay.
So I never went out looking in particular for web web jobs or
Okay.
coding jobs in particular. I was far more interested in open source, working collaboratively with people,
Uh-huh.
and uh, I guess safe to say my focus has never been on the corporate side of things or the 9 to 5 side.
Okay.
So in that way, ETC Dev has become a perfect fit because I'm still able to eat and to buy food, um, but I'm able to work still in an open source and community oriented
Right.
setting, and I don't have to put on a suit and tie. And
So
yeah,
from what you're saying, it sounds like you have some ideals, like there's some idealism. So you weren't just looking for any programming job, but you believed in
yeah,
open
I'm not an
source.
idealist. I'm just yeah.
Well, no, I mean I was when I first learned about open source, my head just exploded. I was a Linux maniac, and
Yeah,
I thought open source is just going to change the world, and this is so important. And
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, no, I understand. And then tell us, because there might be some developers out there that are kind of intimidated about like I would never think about helping etc dev. You have to be a genius to work with them. So kind of why don't you elaborate how
Living
you
proof that you don't have to be a genius.
how you got into blockchains, and then how you ended up with the etc dev community. Why don't you give
Yeah,
that part?
my link to the community and to ETCDev was through Splix,
Uh-huh.
aka Eager,
Uh-huh.
uh, and yeah, that was the point of contact almost a year ago, and
Okay.
sort of we found each other through similar interests on GitHub,
Okay.
and that was that. Sort of he got in touch with me, and uh, yeah, and up until that point, I had been sort of a what are they called on the internet, where you just sit around and watch things.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah,
So there was something that he saw in either your code or something you said that made him think that, hey, this might be a good addition to my team.
I
And
guess yeah. I would have to assume so. Yeah.
okay, and so you were it was open source, and you were kind of attracted to the project, and maybe you liked Igor's managerial ability. So it sounds like you weren't one of these people that was, uh, into, because a lot of people were into Ethereum, the ETH Ethereum, and then they were
Mm-hmm.
mad about the hard fork, and then they discovered ETC. So you weren't one of those people. It just happened. You met with
Right.
Igor, and you
Yeah.
just okay.
I'm a post fork baby. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, which is yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so for the people that don't know about ETC Dev, can you give people a brief description of ETC Dev and how long it's been about, how many team members it has, kind of a little overview for people that have no clue whatsoever
Mm-hmm.
about it?
Yep. ETC Dev. There's about seven or eight of us,
Okay.
and yep, we're based all over the world, and so Russia, Kiev,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Canada. I'm originally from the United States, and um, China.
Okay.
So so we're from all over the world, and come with a wide range of backgrounds, different age ranges as well,
Okay.
which is important. So we've got yeah I hesitate to say older guys on the team, but some guys with a little bit more experience than myself.
Okay.
Great to be able to learn from them, and so our work is to develop, maintain, and provide leadership around the Ethereum Classic core projects.
Right.
So sort of primary one that you could point to now would be Go Ethereum,
Okay.
which is also known as the Geth client.
Okay.
And that's where I spend most of my time hacking.
Okay.
Being
And
a Go learner.
what specifically, what are, like, on the day to day, what are some of the pressing issues that force you to get into the internals of Geth?
Oh, everything.
Okay.
Yeah, there's everything. I mean, yeah, I think yeah, there's a lot of work to do, and a
Okay.
lot of exciting opportunity moving forwards around Geth, and yeah, as well as the other projects. I mean, Sputnik VM and
Right.
Emerald. I think I also don't want to leave out of the picture as well, because those are big projects for us too.
So, because I think people just naively see that there's these clients available and people use them, so they think, okay, well, what's left to do? They're all working. Why do we need?
Yeah, they're all working most of the time. Yeah,
Okay.
but there are always bugs, and there are always edge cases, and there's always room for improvement. As
Okay.
the blockchain grows, and sort of the need for upgrades to protocol changes, security changes.
Okay. Okay.
These clients, and like any software and any idea that's built and used by a community, it's going to be a living thing. So
Okay.
parts of it will need to die, and parts of it will need to grow.
Right. Right. And now, do you? How is your interaction, or is there any interaction with the ETH portion of? Right. They support Geth. Right. So
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
do you guys share code, or
there is a lot of code that's shared. There's also a lot of code that has become different since the fork.
Okay.
Yeah. We've definitely sort of each team has moved the client in different directions at this point. So there's a fair amount of overlap, but it's far from one-to-one.
And is there's slowly becoming more and more differences that are requiring the code bases to become more and more different. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Whether configuration or protocol.
Okay.
Yep.
And so now, what is the most stressful? Give us a sense of, or is it just casual? You guys have meetings and the deadline slips. Okay, no big deal. Or does it ever get stressful? What is it like on a day-to-day basis working with the team?
I think I wouldn't say that it's not stressful. I think that there is stress involved. I mean, whenever you're working in a public space,
Okay.
as a team, I think that there's going to be stresses involved. But I think one of the signs of a healthy team is that stress isn't necessarily a negative thing. I think stress is something that can bring a team together and sort of even give it to reasons to work because there is stress.
Right.
Like a bridge is no good if cars don't drive over it.
Exactly. Right. And so do you ever? It's like if somebody's holding up a release, do you guys ever give them a hard time and pressure them? Hey, come on, let's get this going. Or is there any that kind of how does that work when to keep the schedule on track?
Right. I think it's I wouldn't say that we pressure them. I mean, we're not heckling each other. Or, sort of. None of us are that dramatic, I don't think. But
okay, so it just kind of works basically. People get along, and
I mean, that's one of our first. I mean, one of our first priorities is to work together, and we are on a team. So I think there's a very mutual understanding that. Yeah, that we're in this together.
Okay.
So,
Now, when I had Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Now, when I had Elaine and Stuart, so they both spoke highly of Igor, not just as a talented programmer, but also as a manager. Is that a big part of why you guys are successful? What is he doing that makes, or is he a big part of why it's successful? Could you want to talk about that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. I think he's got Igor has a lot of experience in software development in a lot of different contexts.
Okay.
And he also has a wonderful sense of principle. So I think he's very very clear-headed, and I admire the way that he's able to bring so much experience so clearly to situations in the moment. So for me, being like I said, a relative rookie, it's a pleasure to be able to learn from him in that way. And I think he definitely has the respect of all the members on the team.
Okay, yeah, he was at ETC at the conference in Hong Kong. He told me a little bit of the story of the beginning, how he was trying to keep the artifacts, trying to develop the products, the ETC software products, and month to month he didn't know if ETC was going to survive, and he didn't know if he was going to have funding, and there was just so much uncertainty, but he just kind of pressed through it, and that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, he was a pioneer.
Okay,
one of the few.
Now I'm curious, because have you ever had any like design disagreements, or what's like any? Tell us, like, has been like a big thing where half the team wanted to go do one thing and half the team wanted to do something else, and you guys resolved it?
Do you mean technically, or
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of how you guys work, and also I'm kind of intrigued about how managing software teams. So do you have like a story of something that was a little bit tense, or it took a while to get all the people in agreement, maybe because there was disagreement initially about some design decision? Or
I mean, I think I would hesitate to point to one and to use that as to overemphasize any single example like that, because I think many decisions have those associated architectural questions that come with them. But I think we as a team make it a priority to focus on achieving a best solution collaboratively and through discussion. So that there are definitely differences of opinion. Should we? I mean, and this ranges from smaller stuff to bigger stuff, but I think it's definitely fair and safe to say that we work with it in mind, that it's a priority to find compromise. And there are cases like that. It's typically a best solution involves at least some level of compromise. So
right. Okay, well, yeah, I definitely don't want you to name names or any bad actors or anything. But so it sounds like what you're saying is there are some issues that take a lot of discussion and more discussion.
Yeah.
Before you arrive at the consensus of what to do, to use a blockchain term. Okay.
Right. It's absolutely. And so sometimes we have meetings,
Right. Okay.
And that's
now, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, but with that, and I think that we also, I think one of the things that we do well is to be able to provide developers with a sense of individual ownership and room for creativity as well.
Okay. Now, if somebody, do you get emails from people that say, "Hey, I want to help you guys out," and do you incorporate new people, or is that maybe you've made a decision that maybe a small group is better, or how? Anybody that's listening that wants to volunteer, any comments on that?
Oh, please do. Yeah, yes, volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. That would be spectacular. Yeah, we do have volunteers. Probably the best way to get in touch with us would be either be on Gitter.
Uh-huh.
If you have a certain project in mind,
Okay.
it is relatively GitHub oriented, so it makes it easy to reference issues and pull requests and things.
Uh-huh.
So that's a great place to start if your volunteer focus would be around the code, but there are also other ways to volunteer.
Right.
Designers and community activists and
Mm-hmm.
sort of people like yourself, who are working actively in the community and not necessarily on hand with code.
Right. Well,
So
how about if
we
we
do.
make it specifics? Like, is there a specific need that you really wish somebody would step up to? That right now, maybe there isn't. I don't know, but does anything come to mind?
I mean, I think whatever strikes fancy. I think from a community volunteer and collaborator perspective, for me, it's interesting to see where existing interests lie.
Okay.
So I would say please browse the repos on GitHub. We have issues, some of which are a great place a good first start or something like that, or help wanted.
Okay, so I see what you're saying.
And drill down issues that we know would be accessible and relatively contained in their scope, and sort of a good way to get off the ground.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So if I asked you for like a specific need, and so one of your answers was look at the GitHub repos and there's specific tasks that need to be done right now today, and people could look at those and
right, and some of them are exactly, and some of them are labeled sort of in particular as issues and projects that would be good places to start.
I see. Great. And I'm curious also, so people may have heard that there's 3 ETCDEV related teams. And so do you guys ever coordinate or communicate with the IOHK team and Dexeron's team? Does that ever happen or
in a limited capacity, at least from my perspective, and at least on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say our collaboration sort of immaterial or day-to-day ways is relatively limited.
Okay. And how do you decide how do you prioritize what to do? I mean, obviously the clients are foundational, right? We have to keep those improving, and you're involved with that. So obviously no argument there. But is there any like the Sputnik VM? How do you decide? On the other, besides the core clients, what are the things to prioritize?
How do we decide what to prioritize, or
How do you decide what to work on, what to devote the most attention to? Or is it just whatever?
Personally, or the team?
The team, yeah, that's what I think. The team.
Well, so we work in sort of working groups. So Tomasz and I focus specifically on Go, which makes us we focus primarily on Go, Ethereum, and also Kostya is now jumping over and moving in to help us with that as well, which is great. Have another body.
Okay.
So in a way, it boils down to language. So we have JavaScript project, which is Emerald, the Emerald suite, as well as there's overlap with Rust in that for the back end as well.
Okay.
But the Emerald Dash namespace has a lot of activity: Emerald Wallet, Emerald RS, Emerald JS, and so there's so Shane and Yuri work on the JavaScript side of things.
Can you kind of give for people that aren't familiar with Emerald? So Geth is the Go client, but can you, in 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, can you kind of give the overview of what Emerald is? You've said a few things.
Yeah. So Emerald is a suite. and it's a suite that at the moment is built around a wallet.
Okay.
A wallet scenario. So there's a Rust backend.
Okay.
And that's managed or has been delegated into two sort of separate repositories. One is the pure logic, which is all written in Rust, as I said, is available as a crate.
Okay.
Then there's also a command line interface,
Okay.
which is built on top of that Rust crate,
Okay.
also known as a CLI.
Uh-huh.
And now through this backend that's written in Rust, the front end, so to speak, is the Emerald wallet, which is written in JavaScript.
Okay.
That would be sort of the user interface, the graphical user interface for the wallet.
Okay.
And aside from sort of just being a user interface, it is also growing into a library and even a set of libraries, which are components, sort of logic components for providing reusable and extensible code that somebody could use to build, say, for example, like a blockchain explorer
Okay.
or another, or a lot. I mean, the list, the opportunities would be big. Is the idea? So
is it correct to say that Emerald is like a wrapper around the Geth core, or it's a friendly interface? Because you mentioned blocking.
Yeah, it's a friendly interface. Exactly. And so Emerald Wallet through, it communicates with either a local client or a client.
Okay. Okay. So that's a major component of ETCDEV that they work on in addition to Geth, the Emerald suite, the Emerald library, whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then can you go kind of mention some of the other projects that we should know about? Okay.
Sputnik VM and some of the associated packages in Rust that provide a set of common logic. So Sputnik VM is a blockchain virtual machine.
Mm-hmm.
Can be used in Ethereum Classic, as well as now it's recently added support for a couple of other blockchains as well, or at least potential support for.
Okay.
As far as configuration and protocol.
Now, so Geth had its own virtual machine inside it as part of the implementation, I assume. So
that's correct. Yeah.
So what was the vision to make the Sputnik VM in addition to the Geth VM? Can you talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a step towards modularity.
Okay.
I would say would be one of the big reasons, and modularization like this provides opportunities for benchmarking, auditing, and sort of composability that definitely doesn't happen in the Geth client as is.
So is there a goal or talk about replacing the VM in Geth at some point with the Sputnik VM?
Yes. Yeah. And currently, as is the distribution since at least a couple of releases now ago, have been building with Sputnik as an optional VM.
Okay.
So right now, if you run Geth with the -- Sputnik flag, you'll be using Sputnik VM instead of the standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and also, I was curious. You mentioned that Sputnik VM was going to be used with, or could be used with, other blockchains. So, like, what are some examples, or what did you have in mind there?
Mm-hmm. So, supported networks is Ethereum as well, Ethereum Foundation Network.
Right.
And Ubiq, Expanse, I think Music Coin.
Okay.
And one of the Ethereum Classic forks, I think it's I don't know how to pronounce it, Elysium,
Okay.
like that. So those are also supported.
So it's used by other Ethereum-like systems.
Correct.
Ethereum Classic, like, yeah. I know that Hyperledger has ported, or they have a implementation. They can run ETC, Ethereum smart contracts. I don't know if you're familiar with that, or if you've talked with the Hyperledger guys.
No, not yet. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, they have. I think it's called Burrow. It lets you run Ethereum smart contracts on Hyperledger. When you said you could run it on other blockchains, I wondered if that was one of the examples you were thinking of, but maybe. Okay, so
yeah, it's news to me. Yeah.
Okay, now, and so have we covered all of the? Have we forgotten any products? We did Emerald, Sputnik VM, Geth. Any other big guys we haven't mentioned?
Those are the big ones that are code based. And I think the only final thing that I would touch on is the ECIP repository and process. We're sort of de facto leaders, and well, I don't know about leaders, but we're involved with that.
Okay.
To a large extent, and so that's an important place where protocol changes and upgrades are discussed and either
right,
and so it's an important place where that those decisions happen.
Yeah, like I know there's been some upgrades, hard forks, whatever you want to call them, and you guys have been leaders in that, and so you have to be really careful, obviously, and test the changes, and I'm sure that could. There's a couple points in time where that could be stressful when you deploy it. And,
it's definitely this past December was we had our fingers crossed, but for the monetary policy change, but
the monetary policy change, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, so that went very smoothly.
Okay.
And and we're hoping the same for the difficulty bomb diffusion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. So we were talking before we started recording. There was something about parity and the difficulty bomb. Do you want to elaborate on that for the audience?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mentioned this when I thought we were on air. So we've just had a pull request accepted by the parity client, and I've just merged sort of a corresponding pull request into the Geth client. So as of the next releases, respectively for each client, those will now support the difficulty bomb diffusion upgrade. So if you're listening and if you run either of our clients, please upgrade.
Oh, it just occurred to me you should probably elaborate on what the difficulty bomb is. We can't ever assume everybody knows all this target. Yeah, so go tell them what the difficulty bomb is.
The difficulty bomb sort of harkens back from before the fork. And it was, in my mind, sort of a very strange sort of self-imposed hostage situation, in which after a certain block, the difficulty on the network, which is sort of the how hard it is for miners
to add blocks.
Add blocks, yeah. So that was programmed to quote unquote explode at a certain block number, and that's an explosion that has already happened, and happened a couple of months ago. So now, I think it's every month the difficulty increases by a factor of 2, and this was originally implemented as I said, a hostage situation, or at least a deadline. The actual says is a deadline to for Ethereum to move towards proof of stake, or to provide an incentive that would allow developers to sort of manhandle the protocol, because they have this hostage situation. And so so it was one of the ways, I think, in which, for example, Ethereum Foundation recently moved to change the rate of miner compensation, was by including change, along with at least some level of diffusion as well.
Right, right. So if there was my sense is that if there's ever any concern that people won't want to do something, they'll just want to keep doing what they've been doing. When you something like the difficulty bomb just forces you to make a change.
Right.
So, right.
Yeah.
There's no choice. You got to do something.
Right.
Diffuse the bomb or yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So now, do you have any specific thing you're most proud of that you want to share, like some bug that you fixed or some feature you added that was quite impressive or something? You can feel free to brag if you want, but anything come to mind?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, so you've got the Geth client. We have the Emerald Suite, Emerald Library interface. We have the Sputnik VM, and now tell us about the future. 12 months, 3 years. What can we expect from the ETCDEV team, or what your hopes and dreams? Any thoughts? Near future, long future. Any new products, or just continue working on these three, or you want to talk about?
I think that'll grow. I think at this point, I mean, each of these three leaves, as they are, they occupy a big amount of potential space.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of room for growth within each of them, and change, and sort of intermixing and collaboration even within the projects, sort of like the Geth and Sputnik VM integration.
Right.
The projects have something to learn from each other as well. I think I'm looking at a whole PowerPoint right now with the roadmap for Geth, but I don't think this is the time or the place to dive in.
No, give us just some of the highlights. How about that?
Yeah. So I think this year for Geth, so the very next thing after the difficulty bomb will be a release including some machine logs, which are also known as structured logs. And those are logs that play nicely with log analysis programs, like search. So that's that'll be a nice feature to be able to get sort of a big picture and hopefully a more clear and accessible understanding of the behavior of the client and the network.
Sure. I could imagine somebody using that for data mining, some kind of analysis, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's tons of fun. I've been sort of using it in quote unquote beta for the past couple of months now, actually, and it's a ton of fun. Making these, and then being able to see what's going on in a visual, interactive way is really exciting. So when that comes out, I think we're also planning on writing something. So hopefully there will definitely be some documentation and either a tutorial, walkthrough, some kind of introduction to this to help get people off the ground and engage with it as well. Then after that, Geth, we're moving towards supporting side chains and multiple chains, including Covanet and different sort of side chain consensus protocols like proof of authority. The configurable options.
All right, now we're gonna. You should just out of kindness, you should probably say a sentence or two about what side chains are for the audience.
Yeah. Well, I think that the honest answer is we're still figuring it out.
Okay.
I mean, in theory, side chains would allow sort of just as there are many blockchains, the side chain sort of would provide an opportunity for chains to communicate with each other. And so one of the opportunities that this exposes is to be able to sort of run a company could run an in-house chain, so to speak, be able to communicate with the Ethereum Classic, make a chain and derive drive security and consistency,
Okay.
that cooperation.
Okay. Okay. So side chains and the log analysis improvements, and then any other highlights you want to touch on, or?
No. Now
All right.
we're
That's enough. That's
in the
enough to
future.
whet our appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Great. All right. So anything else before we close that you want to mention? I think that was pretty thorough. I think you pretty much covered it all. Did I forget to ask anything or anything else you want to mention?
I don't think so. I don't think so, Christian. I'm happy with where we.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Isaac, again for joining us, and I appreciate it. And thanks for all the updates on the good work that you guys are doing. And please keep doing what you're doing.
Yes. So. Yeah, I will.
All right. But take care. Thanks again.
Yes. Thank you for your time too, Christian.